INEC declares APC candidate Oyetola winner of the Osun State governorship election. PDP cries foul, calls it a black day for Nigeria. Hospitals, medical centers shut down as health workers join labor strike. In international stories, police chief stabbed to death in southern France. And in sport, Serena Williams left out of China Open tennis draw.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has declared the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Oyetola, the governor-elect of Osun State. The rerun of the governorship election on Thursday was held in 7 polling units across 4 council areas. All Progressives Congress candidate Oyetola was announced winner over People's Democratic Party candidate Ademola Adeleke. Returning officer Professor Joseph Wakwe declared that the APC candidate Oyetola won 255,505 votes, while Adeleke of the PDP polled 255,023 votes.
Adegboyega Isiaka Oyetola of APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. Thank you.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party has denounced the results of the supplementary election, describing it as the most brazen assault on democracy and the biggest robbery ever witnessed in the history of the state. State Party Chairman Soji Adagunodo said the alleged open robbery perpetrated by the All Progressives Congress and aided by security personnel will be resisted by the party. The PDP chairman charged that thousands of eligible voters were chased away from their homes in Orolu, Ife North and Ife South to local governments. The All Progressives Congress APC has disqualified the Ministers of Communication, Adebayo Shitu, Women Affairs, Jumai Al-Hassan, and 4 other aspirants from contesting in the party's governorship primaries. The report of the screening panel reviewed Shitu was disqualified for not possessing the National Youth Service Corps certificate. The Communications Minister confirmed he did not participate in the mandatory youth service because he went straight from the university to the old Oyo State House of Assembly as the youngest elected member in 1979. No reason was given in last night's statement by the party's National Working Committee for Al-Hassan's disqualification. 11 aspirants were cleared to contest in Taraba State. The Nigeria Labour Congress strike has entered its 2nd day. Health workers union members have also joined the ongoing industrial action over the issue of new minimum wage. NLC President Ayuba Waba charges that the current federal administration has a phobia for taking care of the welfare of its workers, specifically their income. Waba warns the workers would no longer allow themselves be taken for a ride by those he calls charlatans in office who push out various draconian policies against workers. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has threatened to embark on a nationwide strike if the federal government fails to implement the 2017 agreements between both parties. ASU and the federal government signed an agreement on the revitalization of the universities and payment of arrears of earned academic allowances. ASU said the federal government also agreed on the need for adequate budgetary allocation to education in line with the UNESCO minimum standard of 26%. Abubakar said only 7% of the total 2018 budget was allocated to the education sector and called for the immediate release of the 20 billion naira revitalization fund. Kogi State Organized Labour has called for the immediate resignation of the state head of service, Deborah Ogumola, over her refusal to retire. The Labour Union says it is a perceived anti-Labour posture which affects the welfare of civil servants in Kogi State. The leadership of the Labour Union says Ogumola's continued stay in office is against the body and spirit of the civil service reform embarked upon by the government. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and 2 commercial banks, United Bank for Africa (UBA) and Fidelity Bank, had been summoned by a federal high court in Benue State over the recent freezing of the state government's accounts. The court has given EFCC and the two banks 30 days to explain why Benue State government's accounts were frozen. The state government also wants the court to declare that the action of the three entities denied the government the right to operate and transact business on the affected accounts. The Rivers State House of Assembly has written to President Muhammadu Buhari over his alleged refusal to include the state in the Ecological Fund. The lawmakers described the federal government's action as indiscriminate and calculated move to frustrate Rivers State government. It is also alleging marginalization. The House leader says the discrimination against Rivers State was carefully done to weaken the government and the people, but vowed the House would resist the move. The Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna State, has promised to construct a befitting cenotaph in honor of 165 military officers who died in a military plane crash in 1992. The military officers were attending a senior course in the college when a Nigerian Air Force C-130 plane crashed while on a tour of Navy formation in Lagos in September 1992. College Commandant Air Vice Marshal Lawal Shitu Alao said 116 of the officers who died were at the college. A road leading to the quarters of senior staff course participants had been officially renamed in their memory. The Central Bank of Nigeria has revised the Nigerian check standard and the Nigerian check printers accreditation scheme and set February the 1st as implementation date. NCS and NICPAS were introduced in 2006 by the Central Bank to increase efficiency and safety in the Nigerian check clearing system. In a circular released by the CBN, the new and old standards shall run concurrently for 1.5 years, after which the old standard would cease. Coming up, news around Africa. Niger cholera outbreak claims 67 lives, and later, Police Chief Pascal Philo stopped to death in southern France.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on, so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now a news trip across Africa. Many health workers in the Democratic Republic of Congo helping with an Ebola outbreak in the epicenter Beni province are in lockdown. Although they have resumed work after a deadly attack in the area, the United Nations says it is not safe for them to move around. Doctors are unable to vaccinate people, monitor possible cases and educate the community about the disease. More than 100 persons have died in the current Ebola outbreak there. There was a violent protest in Beni on Wednesday, calling for an end to insecurity. Nigeria Republic Health Ministry says the cholera outbreak in the country has killed 67 persons since July. Thousands of cases have been recorded. The UN report says more than 500 persons have died from cholera in the Lake Chad region since the start of the year, representing the worst outbreaks to hit the area in 4 years. It says more than 6 million people could be affected if no urgent action is taken to control it. As if cholera were not enough, Niger is also being swept by floods. At least 42 persons have died in flooding in the country since the start of the rainy season in June. A report released on Thursday by UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says most of the flooding happened in northern desert areas. Nearly 200,000 people have been affected and almost 17,000 houses destroyed. It added that some 31,000 head of cattle and more than 7,000 hectares of crops have been lost in the area. Human rights activists have lashed out at Morocco's navy on Thursday for firing on a boat that was carrying migrants to Spain. During the assault, a 22-year-old student was killed and 3 other Moroccans were wounded, one very critically. Morocco's Interior Ministry says the Navy found the boat acting in a suspicious manner and that the vessel had refused to comply with warnings. Middle East and North Africa Director at Human Rights Watch, Sarah Leah Whitson, says there is no evidence at all to suggest that the passengers were a security risk to anyone. The only legal justification Morocco might have had to fire on them. The group has called for the investigation to begin immediately and urged authorities for openness in their findings so those responsible would be brought to justice. Cape Town, South Africa Deputy Mayor Ian Nelson says the city will relax its restrictions on water use for local residents by October. A severe drought began in 2015 in the West Cape province, resulting in water shortages, forcing the city to impose water use restriction since the beginning of 2016. Restrictions became tighter in the following 2 years. Recently, water saving and abundant rain significantly increased local dams' water storage. The municipal government announced that the water restrictions will loosen a little beginning on Monday. Residents will be able to use 70 liters instead of 50 per day and may increase further to 100 liters per day by the end of October.
Essentially, what has happened over these years, we've first of all, within the water distribution system, done a lot of work and reduced all the leaks and pipe breaks and so on. And on that basis have reduced the amount of water lost quite substantially.
When we return, international news, police chief stabbed to death in southern France, and later sport. The Williams sisters left out of China Open tennis draw.
You are watching ANN.
MTN gives 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international scene, a police chief has been stabbed to death outside the Rhodes City Hall in southern France. Pascal Filio was stabbed 3 times by an individual who is already taken into custody. Police has not disclosed his identity. The suspect is said to have begun threatening the mayor and the police chief a week ago when his dog was allegedly taken from him. The police chief died of his injury in a hospital shortly after the incident. He is survived by his wife and 3 children. A European Union United Nations 50 million euro initiative was launched on Thursday in New York with the goal of eliminating violence against women and girls in Latin America. NN's Lucia Deyemi reports.
UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed told the meeting 14 of the 25 countries with the highest rates of femicide in the world is in Latin America, and that most gender-related killings go unprosecuted there. Mohammed said the 50 million euro investment will help in bridging legislative and policy gaps. It will also promote attitudes of gender equality and provide quality services to survivors and reparations to victims of violence and their families.
Latin America is home to 14 of the 25 countries with the highest rates of femicide in the world. 98% of gender-related killings go unprosecuted. The 50 million euro investment we are here announcing today will go into action to address legislative and policy gaps, strengthen the institutions that carry out this work, promote attitudes of gender equality, provide quality services for survivors and reparations for victims of violence and their families.
The EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Federica Mogherini, for her part, said the program's ambition is to make a real difference in the lives of girls and women in Argentina, Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico.
With this program, we have the ambition to make a real difference in the life of girls and women in Argentina, Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. And in doing so, we believe we can change not only the lives of women, but also the lives of men and the entire societies.
The Spotlight Initiative, with a 500 million euro commitment from the EU, deploys targeted, large-scale investment in Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Pacific, and the Caribbean, aimed at achieving significant improvements in the lives of women and girls. Lucy Adeyemi, ANN News.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says developing countries are champions of multilateralism. He was addressing a group of 77 developing countries at the United Nations. The Secretary General said developing countries must be supported so they can create conditions for mobilizing domestic resources. He also urged the international community to increase efforts to effectively fight illicit capital flows, money laundering, and tax evasion, which he said continue to drain vital resources from the developing world.
Its very essence, the G77 has been a champion of multilateralism. You have defended it and acted to make it stronger, pushing for multilateral solutions to solve common challenges and to promote a fair globalization. Now we need concrete action to ensure results.
The Group of 77 was established in Geneva in 1964 by 77 developing countries at the end of the first session of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It is the largest intergovernmental organization of developing countries in the United Nations. U.S. Senate Republicans are pushing to vote on President Donald Trump's nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court, whom 3 women have now accused of sexual assault. After dramatic testimonies from him and one of his accusers, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, most of the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee are still bent on voting today. Kavanaugh, emotional and angry, denied assaulting Christine Blasey Ford when they were teenagers. Dr. Ford, who testified first and was close to tears throughout her testimony, described the incident in detail, saying it had just drastically affected her life. President Trump has urged the Senate, where Republicans have the majority, to vote. Democrats are asking for a delay to investigate more and hear from the other accusers before a vote is taken. The Supreme Court plays a vital role in U.S. politics. Its 9 members are appointed for life and have the final say on U.S. law. American Bar Association supports that stance. It says an FBI investigation is needed and all the accusers should be given a chance to be heard. The Senate committee vote is expected today, with a floor vote likely on Saturday. The outcome is still uncertain, with a number of senators on both sides yet undecided. Canadian members of parliament have voted unanimously to revoke the honorary citizenship given to Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Passing this motion was a response to a failure to stop the persecution of the Rohingya minority in a country. Sukui won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991 for efforts to bring democracy to Myanmar, then known as Burma, and was under military rule. A report from the United Nations last month called for a genocide investigation of Myanmar's military. Canada granted honorary citizenship to Sukui in 2007. This honor is conferred in Canada by a joint resolution of both houses of parliament and must be removed the same way. Up next, sport. Serena Williams left out of China Open tennis draw. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store anywhere in Nigeria or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand,
There is a new all-news network on the scene in Nigeria to give news from a purely news perspective and to promote free information flow across Africa. Fresh views, unbiased, bold, with a purely African view. African News Network, ANN, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sports. Contrary to reports that Ghana would be stripped of the hosting rights for this year's African Women's Cup of Nations, CAF officials have confirmed Ghana will host the 2-week competition in November. Reports about Ghana losing the hosting rights started after CAF's General Secretary, Anthony Bafo, expressed dissatisfaction with Ghana's preparations. Ghana now has 6 weeks to get it right. American tennis player Serena Williams has been left out of the China Open tennis draw on Friday following her meltdown at the U.S. Open. The 37-year-old has accused the umpire of lying and sexism as she lost 6-2, 6-4 to Japan's 20-year-old Naomi Osaka. The episode polarized tennis, with many expressing sympathy for Williams and others saying her behavior was out of line. Serena and her sister Venus did not appear on the list of 64 players in the Beijing tournament, one of the mandatory women's tour events. Report from the United States say Williams' season is now over, making it the 4th year in a row she has curtailed her playing commitments. Well, hot temper can be costly. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great weekend.